And glad you are with us the day after the day after. Welcome to the middle of January. We have made it, and plenty to do today, and let us get started right now. Joe Brady's going to the Panthers. That's the big story in the NFL, and what does it mean to Ed Orgeron on the Bayou? We'll talk about losing his most valuable coach this year this afternoon. Meanwhile, Oregon is gaining an offensive coordinator. You may have heard of him. He is Joe Moorhead, who lasted 2 years in Starkville only to be unceremoniously dumped 2 weeks ago. He was replaced by Mike Leach last week. He was a very good coordinator under James Franklin, and his graduate assistant intern was Joe Brady. Joe Brady's doing better than his old boss right now. Meanwhile, Tua is expected to throw ahead of the NFL draft, but not at the combine. Nobody really expected that. What they do expect is Tua to go high in the NFL draft. So that's where we are, and we're glad you're here. Yesterday was a great show. The day after the national championship, we'll continue luxuriating in that celebration. Still chuckling over Coach O and Kelly chomping down at 2 a.m. on Popeye's fried chicken. They're in the arguably the best food capital of the world. He's a simple man, though. He didn't need to go to Antoine's or Commander's Palace or Galatoire's. He was happy with Popeyes, and we love him for that. A lot on tap today. Let's get right to it. Brody Miller covers LSU. He'll give us the inside from The Athletic. Ken Smithmeyer, the judgment expert. We'll get his take on how Ed Orgeron pulled off this Horatio Alger story and what he thinks of the new hires in Mississippi. And Tom Van Haren will join us as well, talk about the mess up in State College. Your calls as well at 855-242-7285. Let's start. Ron is in Kentucky. Ron, how are you, my friend?
I'm okay, Paul. Just a couple of questions.
Sure.
To what extent do you believe that game being played in Louisiana was helpful to the victory for LSU?
Ron, I think it was helpful, but I do not believe it was the critical factor. I think the fact that LSU was so dominant all year long, but it gave them some momentum. And I mean, I was on the sideline when LSU was struggling, and it was pretty quiet. And when Clemson scored, they had a lot of support. But I think it helped, but I don't think it really had a significant impact on the final score.
I think you're exactly right. And secondly, in a game environment like that on your sleep schedule, Paul, how do you handle that?
Listen, you just try to do the best you can, Ron, getting ready for something like that. And you know, it was this past weekend was far easier than the season when we were going at a little faster pace. But listen, you've been there. You just adapt to whatever the environment is.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you, Paul.
Ron, you be well. I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great to have you on. Kirk Herbstreit said something many years ago, which I do adhere to, and someone asked him, that someone was me, by the way, how do you deal with it? I mean, you work game day you're there at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning, and you're still doing the game at 11:30, then you're flying home. I said, when do you sleep? He said, I sleep in February. And I always thought about that. We do this because we love it, and I will never complain about anything that we have to do, because there's no such thing as having to cover the national championship game. Thanks for the call, though. Bob is in Tennessee. Hey, Bob, welcome to the program.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks.
We are doing great. Thanks a lot.
And I just wanted to mention to you, there's been a lot of talk from Joe Burrow to Coach O and everybody else about Louisiana and the enthusiasm in the state of Louisiana for LSU football. And I just wanted to tell you a little story, in my opinion, how that came about. Back when Paul Dietzel was the coach at LSU, he came up with a thing for LSU defense called the Chinese Bandits.
Oh, yeah.
And when the bandits stood up to put their helmet on to go on the field, the stadium absolutely erupted. It's a wonder it didn't absolutely fall down. And ever since that time, that stirred the people of the state of Louisiana like nothing else, in my opinion. And it just has carried over. And it was a great thing to see. And, boy, that championship game was terrific. And Joe Burrow will be a hero in the state of Louisiana for a long time.
Yeah, Joe Burrow will never, what's the old cliche? He'll never have to buy a drink in Louisiana again.
Yeah. And I'm an old guy now, and I don't come up with names all that well, but the guy for LSU, that the defensive end that is on your program all the time.
Marcus?
Huh?
You talking about Marcus?
Yeah. Let me tell you, that was the greatest thing in the world to see. You talk about somebody who was living LSU. I mean, I laughed my head off. It's a wonder he didn't wet his pants. He was so excited.
Yeah, no, it really. I have to tell you, he thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, he milked that national championship run for every single drop. Bob, thanks for the call. You be well. Thank you very, very much. Chad is in New Orleans. Hello, Chad.
Hello, Paul.
How you doing, man?
How are you, buddy?
I am doing great.
Greetings from Louisiana. I tried to call 116 times yesterday, Paul. 116 times.
Well, I am thrilled you made it in today.
Couldn't get through. I think it's easier to get into Fort Knox than to get into your show. So kudos.
Thank you very much.
Kudos. I just want to give props to Clemson, first of all. That's a hell of a football team.
They are good.
I'll tell you what, I really didn't think – I was not expecting what I saw in that first quarter. And I was deeply humbled in the stands, surrounded by Clemson people. I was in the Clemson section. And I was nervous. I didn't give up, but I was nervous because they had the better plan than us in the beginning of the game. No doubt about it. Dabo Swinney, he's a hell of a football coach.
He is, and I can't find anything unkind to say about them. Doesn't matter what I mean. They won the game against Ohio State. Where I know a lot of Ohio State fans still think they were the better team. Well, good. Doesn't matter. You didn't win the game.
Yeah, absolutely. One more thing about Clemson before I get into LSU. I know we give a lot of accolades to Venables, and he really is a good coordinator. Who is Clemson's offensive coordinator? Because that guy deserves a
Well, they had two, and one of them is leaving, Tony Scott, to go to, South Florida. So they've had a great combination there of two people who call the plays and who run the offense, and it has worked to perfection. It will be interesting to see now, losing one of them, what the end result will be. But, hey, thank you very, very much for your call. Jeff is in Ohio, and you are on the air. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Paul. Hey, thanks. Good talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Caller, and, watch the show. Enjoy it.
Well, great.
Hey, I want to talk a little bit about the negative impact that I believe preseason polls has on the whole season.
Okay.
And I was wondering, is there any way you think – I know that all the sports shows have to have something to talk about ahead of time, but is there any way to push that back? Because I think when you start naming –
Hey, by the way, let me correct myself. I meant to say Tony Elliott's the name of the coordinator, not Tony Scott. So my apologies to the whoever Tony Scott is. Jeff, in terms of the negativity, I really would like you to explain, how does a preseason poll deleteriously affect the football season?
Well, you know that they start talking about, well, they beat this ranked team, and then after 3 or 4 weeks into the season, that team turns out to be not very good. And so now that supposed big victory over a highly ranked team no longer has any merit, I don't think. And then you look at a team that's unranked that turns out to be a really good team. They don't get any credit for being a good team, and the teams that beat them don't get credit for beating a team that should be.
Yeah, but I hear what you're saying, and I've been in the middle of these arguments. Remember a couple of years ago, Alabama, people said Alabama didn't beat anyone, and I said, well, hold on a second. They beat the number 3 team in the country in Florida State, who happened to end up losing 6 games. But you can only, I look at it as you have to measure what happens on that day. And if you beat the number 6 team in the country, you beat the number 6 team in the country. When you lose a game, you drop, and then whether these teams fall apart or not may in some ways have been caused by that loss. So I like the polls. To me, they're just we know they don't mean very much, but they are a base mark to judge where teams are when it starts. And that's why, I mean, we did an interview yesterday with somebody, Mark Slabaugh, about projections for this year. Well, college football is a year-round sport in terms of the conversation. So what's wrong with saying, okay, I think Clemson will be number 1 next year? It doesn't really matter, and I don't know why people get so hung up on the final result of that. Brian is in New York. Hey, Brian, you're on the air. Go right ahead.
Hey there, Paul. It's actually Reno, Nevada, but that's okay. I'll take New York.
Yeah,
anyway,
you know what? Reno, Nevada is only, 5,000 miles from New York, so I was close.
Give or take. Yeah, you're in the neighborhood. Anyway, a couple of observations that I wanted to get your thoughts on. The typical Tiger luck, we can't even fully enjoy a full 24 hours of, without question, one of the greatest seasons that any team has ever had in college football. Brady announces it. But that being said, I'm trying to give a word to Tiger Nation to just calm down. The best analogy I've been able to come up with is Brady is leaving. Anybody would leave that's making $400,000 and has the opportunity to make $3 million. As much as I love my company, I know I'd be gone tomorrow. That's just going to happen. Think of him as the architect of this system, though, and not so much as the construction worker. Well, an architect goes out there and builds a building, puts a project together, and then he moves on. Well, we have the design. We have the coaches. If you remember correctly, Coach Munez, who I believe is going to end up taking Brady's place and eventually become our offensive coordinator, he was thanked by Joe Burrow the night of the Heisman. And I'm just trying to get it across to people because I live and die. I bleed purple and gold. I'm an LSU alum. I love LSU. The bar has been so raised. It's just amazing what I think this is going to do for us in future recruiting. And speaking of which, the other point I'm trying to make is with this coach's ability, with this team's ability to evaluate talent, I think we're going to be okay, with or without Brady. You look at a 2-star like Jefferson. The only thing that man didn't catch this season was a cold. You look at Queen the other night. He was a wrecking ball. He was an absolute wrecking ball. He was all over the place. It wouldn't surprise me if he actually goes to the draft. I hope he stays another year. But his performance the other night was Devin White, Devin White-like. Our linebacker that we lost last year that went to the draft, he was all over the place. And the point I'm trying to make is we're going to be okay. We should be in this mix. That's really all I have to say.
Brian, you're absolutely right. Joe Brady was fantastic, and I don't blame him for leaving either. But the template has been cemented into that system, and he is not going to adversely affect the future. Hey, thanks for the call. We have a lot to do on what's already been a pretty active Wednesday. It's kind of hard to keep up with this week because Monday seemed like a holiday. We'll take a break. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285. We have a lot of guests coming on board as well. We are off and running. Of Odell Beckham's handing out money. Was it fake money? Was it real? And does it really matter, guys?
Money ain't got no owners, only spenders, right?
Was Odell Beckham handing out $2 bills with Clemson stamps on them?
Where'd you get
Because
that?
these were littered on Bourbon Street along with
those
Clemson
real?
Tears.
I used one the other day.
So I got a question. I got this. Yeah, it's real.
Wow.
It's real.
That's real. It's a real thing.
I know they've been doing this for a little bit, Paul, but if you want to say you know we're number 1, wouldn't you hand out singles with 1 on it instead of like number 2 because you lost the game? I mean,
were they expecting
I
to
got
lose?
one on Saturday afternoon down there, and I gave it to a Clemson fan coming back yesterday morning.
They needed him.
What's the purpose of this?
I think they want to show their economic impact, but it's again $2 bills versus singles. Like, hey, we're number one. Pay with everything in singles. I don't know.
Let your economic impact speak for itself.
Yeah, I know. Paul, I did watch the show a little bit yesterday. I want to say thanks for Brams and Hannah for killing me for not being here. So appreciate that, guys. Thank you.
It's all love.
Mark,
We always
by
make
the
fun
way,
of
for the
here.
record, I told Mark not to come in.
Oh.
It's
They're
true.
late and $1 short or $2 short, Paul.
I mean,
but, thanks for sticking up for me
seeing
now.
him at 3 a.m. passed out at Pat O'Brien's, I said, Mark, take
All
the
right.
day off.
Was this
Great
him?
transition
Was
because
this him?
this was what I
Masterful
saw
segue, Paul.
at the airport Tuesday morning. This is 7 a.m. Unknown LSU fan celebrating a little too hard. I mean, this guy took up an entire row. He was dead to the world.
If you recognize this lower torso,
I couldn't stop laughing.
Come get your man.
By the way, and if people are saying, how could you take a picture of him? I was in line to take a picture of him along with about 10 other people who were just laughing.
it's like Disney's Sleeping Beauty castle. You gotta wait.
It was wonderful. And I could tell you that being in New Orleans when LSU wins a national championship, and that is a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
You did it.
I could not pass up.
I would say it's better than being in New Orleans when LSU loses a national
I can
championship.
only imagine.
Welcome back. Let's go to the phones, and Coach is up next in Tennessee. Hello, Coach.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
I see we got a Mark Kubiak sighting.
Yeah.
He's back.
Yeah. Mark,
Hey.
I never saw Mark sober one time in New Orleans.
I'm sure you didn't. Well, I'm sure y'all had a great time. But, hey, I just really wanted to call and congratulate you and your staff on really one of the best shows Monday that I had seen. It seemed like it went from 0 to 100 on one commercial break when all the fans showed up.
Yeah, somebody from a national publication posted a picture of some other show with all these fans behind us, and then they posted our show during the first hour, and they said, "Well, typical Finebaum show. Nobody showed up." And that's why there are people in America who describe the media as fake news. But I thought the last couple hours had more energy than any show I've ever done. It was in the same realm of the SEC championship show, except it was just more dramatic because, I really don't know. I could not guess how many people were behind us, but there were many thousand.
There was, and I was just trying to. Could you hear anything?
No.
Any of the
There came a point late in the show when I literally couldn't hear anything. But I don't listen to the callers anyway, so I just nod my head and go, "Yeah, right. Great call."
Hey, that's correct. Hey, just to mention your caller earlier from Ohio talking about the preseason polls, and I think you said this yesterday, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the preseason poll prior to this year was pretty spot on. I think maybe 6 of the top 8.
I read it yesterday. The preseason. I think the top 6 teams were all in the top 6.
Top 6 or top 8, I believe.
Excuse me.
Alabama
Alabama ended up being 8. Of the preseason top 6, they all finished in the top 8, which is pretty remarkable.
That is. Well, congratulations again. I guess this is the second day of talking season for now,
yeah,
right?
and listen, I think this will be a long off season of talking because there are, unlike a year ago today when we all say, oh, okay, a year from today we'll be talking about Clemson and Alabama. We don't know that right now.
No, we don't. But anyway, hey, looking forward to the rest of the show.
Thank you
Paul.
very much. Great to have you on. Wayne is in Florida. Wayne, how are you?
Yes, sir. I'm fine.
So Wayne, let me ask you a question. Someone told me that you were in a hospital. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What is the issue?
I just wanted to know what he thought of that LSU going all the way this year.
Hey, Wayne, this is Paul. I just want to make sure you understand you're talking to me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Wayne, you're in the hospital, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you turn the sound down on your TV so we can finish this, or the radio so we can finish this conversation without interference?
Yeah, I will.
Okay. We'll wait.
Okay. Is that good?
Yeah. Well, Yeah. So I just want to make sure you're listening to me and not the TV. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So by the way, what are you in the hospital for?
Major knee replacement.
Oh my goodness. So are you doing okay?
I'm walking now with a walker.
So you've already had the surgery, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you? I mean, I hope is the medication helping you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. It's not affecting the number of words you use in a sentence, is it?
No.
Okay. I just thought it was a certain type of pain medication that only allowed you to utter one word in every sentence. That was my only question. But let's get to the question. What is it?
I was wondering what you thought about LSU all the way this year.
Do I think LSU can go all the way in the next season?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Do you think they can?
I would probably bet against them right now.
See, I was born in Small Canal Zone, and I moved to Louisiana, and my whole family is into LSU.
Yeah. No, I'm giving the one-word answers.
I just wanted to know what you thought about LSU going all the way this year.
Yeah, well, I said I don't think they're going to, Wayne.
You think they are?
No.
You don't think they are?
No.
Why not?
Well, I don't know who their quarterback's going to be, and until I know who their quarterback is going to be, it makes it virtually impossible for me to make that prediction.
Okay.
Wayne, I tell you what, you feel better, and when you call back, let's expand that vocabulary to more than one word. Gary is up next in Louisiana. Hello, Gary.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
I am doing great. Thank you for the call.
Hey, I'm a first-time caller and a long-time fan, and appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Look, you work for ESPN. What do you think about their final power rankings?
I think it's utterly stupid. I don't know who did it, but the person who did it should be fired.
Well, I agree with you, pal.
So let's find out who did it, and we'll tell them they're out. I mean, I've never bought power rankings, but I especially don't buy a power ranking after the season. What difference does it make?
Exactly. Just wondering how Ohio State gets all the love from ESPN.
Well, because ESPN is biased.
Well,
there again,
I
finally said it. ESPN has a Big Ten bias. Herb Street, Galloway. I mean, Desmond Howard went to a Big Ten school. Todd Blackledge went to a Big Ten school, even though they weren't in the Big Ten. It's pretty apparent that Urban Meyer, even though he works somewhere else, ESPN hates the SEC. We know that, don't we? They don't have an SEC bias. Let's take a break. More to come. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285. Brody Miller from The Athletic. He'll give us the latest about OBJ and was it real money? Was it fake money? I said yesterday that I was told it was fake. Today we understand that Joe Burrow said it was real. I also maintain I really don't care, but apparently some people do.
I care if OBJ is walking around with wads full of fake cash. I think this is something we should really help him
You're
with.
more concerned if it actually was fake.
I mean, who carries around that much fake cash with them, Paul, and then makes a scene to show it? I get it. You might want to make, hey, this, but I mean, maybe you show the fake dollar bills. Why do you carry around that much? Like, it's just so much stuff in your pockets. I mean, listen, we should all trust OBJ because he was a great marketer in New York City so much that he moved to Cleveland to prove he could do it there. But aren't you a little concerned with his actions if it is fake money?
Well, listen, I'll just speak for myself here. Me, myself, and I don't care what he does.
I don't either, except if he's carrying around wads of fake cash. That's weird.
Danny, help me with something. Isn't what Kubiak just said contradictory?
Somewhat.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things. Look, you can be a great receiver. You can go out and do things. But, I mean, it's just really weird to me that anybody would just be like, hey, I got an idea. I'm getting ready to go to the national championship game. I'm going to stuff my pockets with this fake money.
It's part of the stunt.
He's OBJ.
I get it.
He's not so narrow-minded as some people.
I know. Look, he's a marketing genius. I mean, he pulled this off, and he pulled off the great move from New York to Cleveland.
Yeah.
What?
By the way, after spending the fall in New York, I think I would move to Cleveland too.
That's fair.
I would not move to either. It's gonna take a miracle to get me to move out of the South again. But I don't know. OBJ, is it matter if he gave the money? Obviously, if it was real money, then it probably has to be at least be investigated. I don't really have too much issue with it. I don't think you do either, Paul. Like you just said,
it's one thing to give money under the table. It's one thing to give it out in public.
Maybe.
And it's easily explainable, and whatever money he gave to someone, all they have to do is give it back.
How can they say that he gave him that money for having a good game, and it's like, did he give it to him right after the game on the field with a bunch of cameras rolling or something? I don't get it.
If there's any evidence.
I think it's among the dumbest stories of the year, but then again, that's me.
It's early.
It is early. Right now, it's in contention for the dumbest story of the year. But again, we're only in January 15th here, so we'll see what happens the rest of the year. But having somebody
right
give
now,
out
Dan,
handfuls
the
of fake
only
cash.
person I've met who is exorcised about this is Mark Kubiak.
Fair.
I just wanted a handful of fake cash from OBJ. So if you're out there,
I wish I would take real cash from him. I was a little short over the weekend. Welcome back. Brody Miller from The Athletic joining us to talk about the dream season for the Tigers and how they are going to cope without Joe Brady. Brody, thanks for the time. Great to have you on. And just before we get to some specifics, just your thoughts on this amazing ride for the LSU Tigers.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody recently, and I feel like this kind of is like a slightly different week than your normal national champion of the past decade, because I think so many of them, it's kind of you go into a season, everybody thinks that's on the table, right? I just don't. I think this one was so different because it's an LSU team that wasn't really on many people's expectation list. That wasn't really on the table, and it's a program that I just think had a lot of demons to exercise this past decade. So to do it the way they did it, to do it with the juggernaut offense, I mean, I think it was one of the more kind of emotional and as you know, just fascinating seasons I've seen a national championship in a little while.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of if you had told somebody there will be a team that will knock off both Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson to win the national championship, I mean, that is climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go as far as having that conversation about best teams ever, because that's just something I think we need time and distance to get perspective on. But I do think it's pretty safe to say this is the most, accomplished, impressive national championship season ever. I mean, undefeated, 7 wins against AP top 10 matchups, took down all 4 of the preseason top 4 AP teams. I mean, and just in terms of the accomplishments across the season, I think this is the best ever. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's at least in the conversation of best teams ever, you would think.
What was it like to cover, Brody?
I think it was great to cover just from the sense that, I mean, LSU's always kind of got a lot of culture and personality, right? But this season was on a different level of just the personality in the sense to cover. You got Joe Brady, who is one of the more, unique, fascinating people I've been around, just in the sense that, I mean, he is this quirky, weird, just uber, unbelievably confident, kind of just strange, kind of cult-like legend figure. I don't think that's exaggerating. He really is just one of those personalities you get, once a generation out of programs. So you got things like that. You got the Ed Ogeron story, which is, the turnaround that none of us could have ever predicted, and maybe it's never really happened in college football. You just have so many things like that and so many personalities on this team that I'm not going to lie, it's a writer's dream. I was saying to somebody yesterday, I'm like, I got to kind of realize that I might never cover another team that's just this top to bottom interesting again in my life. So maybe I peaked too young.
It happens, Brody. I've told this story before, but as a very young reporter, maybe your age, I walked out of Bear Bryant's news conference announcing his retirement in 1982, and I said, you know what, this is really sad. I've only been covering sports for a couple of years, and I probably will never cover anything like this again. And I was around to cover Saban at Alabama, so I was wrong. You may be wrong. You may not be, though, because I think the odds may be longer. But I have to ask you, before we get too much about what's the future look like for LSU, what's this future look like replacing Joe Brady?
Yes, I think that's the $1 million question. So it's a tricky thing because you have to start with the fact that as much as we all kind of know and understand that Joe Brady was, a massive architect of this and was clearly, in reality kind of like a co-OC, Steve Ensminger still is the offensive coordinator. It is kind of a tough thing to remember sometimes that. I think when you look at the Steve Ensminger thing, you have to, they think of him as a really good play caller. They think of him as a very smart coach. He just needed Joe Brady, and he'll admit this to you, to kind of update him schematically, take LSU just from a schematic point of view into the 21st century. But I think everyone in that building would tell you Steve Ensminger is a very good offensive coordinator. So, and now he has that, right? I mean, even though Joe Brady's leaving, that playbook, that scheme, that is still there. That is Steve Ensminger's offense now. So I think you at least have that as your steady point. So then the question becomes, do you go and bring somebody else, maybe young or some other schematic mind in to kind of keep modernizing it? Or do you bring in somebody, and this will be the first name to answer your question I would point to, analyst George Munoz. He's a former Louisiana Lafayette offensive coordinator. If you ask anybody in that program, they'll tell you he is, in reality, he's an analyst, so it's always got to tiptoe around it, but he was Joe Burrow's quarterback coach at the end of the day. Joe Burrow invited him to the Heisman ceremony, which is not common for an analyst to get invited to. That's how kind of close they were. And he was definitely a kind of a third offensive coordinator at times. He was definitely a key part of this offense and a very well-respected guy. So he's the first one you point to because, like I said, you don't necessarily need another offensive coordinator. So I think he'd be a good promotion there to maybe be a passing game coordinator type. But then, maybe then you look at a Will Hall at Tulane. I think he's another up-and-comer that kind of, not to the Brady extent, but could fit that Brady label a little bit. I think he's somebody I'd look at. But I think Munoz is at least where you start. We'll see how good LSU feels about it.
Let's talk about what's going to happen at quarterback. Certainly the portal is wide open. There's speculation there. What's your guess on that? And is Miles Brennan or a younger player the answer?
Yeah, I can't tell if I'm a little naive on this one, but the more I talk, so many people are just under this assumption that LSU's going straight to the transfer portal, and it's certainly possible. I'm not ruling that out at all, but I don't think there's many people in the portal that LSU is desperately wants right now. I don't think there's anyone jumping out of them like Joe Burrow did 2 years ago, right? I think and granted, some of this I have to admit is things a coach is going to say when he's asked publicly about something, but you go to Steve Ensminger like I did 10 days ago, or you go to Joe Brady like I did 3 days ago, you ask them about Miles Brennan, and they don't skip a beat. They say he's going to be a championship quarterback at LSU. He's going to take this offense and run with it next year. Ed Orgeron calls him a championship quarterback every other week. And granted, I know those are things you say, but it is just kind of a thing where they all talk like it is a no-brainer that he is taking over this offense next year. Do they expect Miles Brennan to be Joe Burrow? Nobody on earth does. He's got a really good arm, needs to develop in studying film and kind of processing. There aren't many. Nobody really processes on the level of Joe Burrow. That's not going to happen often. But he could at least be a solid quarterback with a loaded group of skill players around him to throw to. So I don't think there's going to be this offense will never come around again. But I would imagine they could still stay afloat next year.
The schedule next year is a little bit different. Texas is at home. Alabama is at home. Florida is not. As you look ahead, that seems easier than this year. But also Auburn is on the road. But a lot of players are defecting, though, correct?
Yeah, we already in the past hour we've seen Grant Delpit and Patrick Queen declare they're going, and Queen was actually, I'm not going to say a surprise, but that was one of the last guys they were kind of really holding out for, that they really hoped they could bring back. I was told he was 50-50 as of yesterday. He's somebody who looked like a star at the end of the season, and one LSU staffer said that he could have been their their Devin White type next year if he came back. That's a big loss, and I trust me, expect many more coming today and tomorrow. I think LSU's ready for a mass exodus. I've heard of at least two, pretty star players who are coming back, so that is definitely good news for LSU. But grand scheme of things, this is going to be an all-time exodus. But to get to what you're saying about the schedule, it's tricky, right? Because the huge home run games, the Alabamas, the Texases, yes, they are at home, so that's a benefit. But I think that's those are games. I don't know. I think it's almost harder to have the schedule like next year, where it's Florida, Auburn, A&M, those 50-50 games for them to be on the road. I think that's actually more daunting of a schedule because Alabama's going to be loaded next year. They're going to be a heavy favorite in Baton Rouge. So suddenly you go from an undefeated team to, I don't think it's out of the question to think 9-3 is a realistic scenario next year. And that would still be a top 15 team, right? I'm not saying that'd be bad, but that does look like a daunting schedule next year.
Recruiting, though, is going well, so it won't, even if next year dips a little bit, it won't be long. But how do you think this win, this season, this incredible ride is going to affect the mindset of the LSU fans who have just been up and down the roller coaster, and finally it all came together?
Yeah, and I think that it kind of goes back to the Miles Brennan thing, right? And it goes back to the Joe Burrow thing of, I would hate to be Miles Brennan. It's like whoever's going to replace Nick Saban or whoever replaces Coach K at Duke, where I feel I really don't envy him because LSU might be a top 25 offense next year. I expect them to be pretty good on offense next year with all that talent, Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall, all those guys come back. But it's never going to be like this again. So will the LSU fan base have the awareness and the patience, which doesn't normally go with LSU, right, to be able to kind of understand the grand scheme of things? Things are going well. You're never going to have this again. I don't know, because suddenly they went from being in the Stone Age offensively to now suddenly now they're used to the best offense that college football's ever seen. I don't know how they'll handle it, but I think everybody understands that next year will be at least a step back. Recruiting's going well. You're recruiting on offense like you're not really used. LSU's never really been able to land an Eric Gilbert top 10 tight end out of Georgia, guys like that. Some of the receivers they're bringing in this class, they're getting some offensive linemen back. It seems like they're recruiting in a way that you can sustain the offense long term. But yeah, I would imagine LSU has to have at least a little bit of patience that it will take a step back next season.
Great conversation with Brody. Thank you, Brody. Great job covering LSU this season. Look forward to chatting very soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Fantastic reporter there for The Athletic. And we are heading to a break. More to come on the program. A lot to do. As he mentioned, a lot of LSU players definitely coming out, and the search is on to replace Joe Brady. We are back after this. Brody said some interesting things about what's next, guys, in relation to the future. But he also seemed to be tamping down expectations for next year.
Yeah, when you come off the most highly prolific offense in college football history and you lose your passing game coordinator and your Heisman-winning quarterback, I'm sure expectations are there, Paul. But do you see any correlation? Because I think 2016 Clemson, they finally reached that mountaintop and everybody's like, hey, that was great. They might take a step down, but the recruiting between LSU and Clemson up to that point feels about similar. Do you see LSU maybe taking a step back? 15-0 is, we'll say it's impossible to do back-to-back years in the SEC, but do you think they could, get it to 11, 12 wins, maybe make a push for the playoff next year?
Maybe. I definitely think they'll step back a little bit. It may not be long-term because the recruiting is where it is, but I think when you factor in the Alabama game, the Auburn game on the road, Florida on the road, I would be very surprised if LSU is in Atlanta next year.
I felt like Brody was trying to sell us on the old give a man a fish, teach a man a fish parable. He sort of was imparting that Joe Brady was leaving the Bayou, but he'd left his playbook. He'd equipped Steve Ensminger with the necessary upgrades to his playbook and mentality. Yeah. Do you buy that at all?
I really don't. I think Ensminger is was an unsung hero this year, but Joe Brady gave the offense the juice, and he was the mastermind behind what we saw from Joe Burrow. I think that's very difficult to replicate.
Now, do you have to replace Brady with Ensminger already there? Do you find a new passing game coordinator? Do you take a chance on somebody younger? Do you take the NFL? How do you replace it, I guess, is the question, or do you?
Listen, it's a challenge. Nick Saban had a lot of things going well at Alabama until all these coordinators started bailing. It becomes more difficult. But I think without Joe Burrow, there is a tremendous X factor. It's hard for me to believe that Miles Brennan is the answer.
Yeah, think how difficult it is to find that right chemistry for a partnership. Like, if you've seen any of the behind-the-scenes videos of how Ensminger and Brady worked together up in the box calling the plays and them calling down to the field line to talk to Joe, they were, one would jump in, they were like finishing each other's sentences and things like that. It's really, you don't just replicate that. Beyond just what Brady knows about passing game, his chemistry with Ensminger was rare, and that's going to be as hard to duplicate as anything.
The biggest challenge on top of all that are expectations. Now, fans expect, we expect, and a loss or two seems like a big deal, or will be one. We're back. Glad to have you on. Randy is in South Carolina. Hello, Randy.
Hey, how you doing there, Paul?
Hey there.
Hey, can you hear me good? I got you on the speaker.
You sound great.
All right. Hey, man, I just want to tell everybody down there in Louisiana, we went down there to the French Quarter RV Park and stayed, and what great hospitality. You know, they fed us good. He said he was going to feed us and beat us, and I guess that's what they did. But a great game. I think we were in it all the way up to when we had that the pass turned over in the end zone there for pass interference. That's kind of like I thought was a spark, but then that went away. But then when the fumble, it was over. But a great game. Thanks for the hospitality.
Well, hey, thank you, Ray. By the way, who needs football? Clemson is now a basketball school. What are the odds of them going to Chapel Hill and beating North Carolina and following it up at home with a win over Duke? So things have changed in little old Clemson. Al is in Memphis. Al, welcome to our program.
Hey, Paul. Always good to talk to you, buddy.
Thank you.
In my opinion, Joe Brady's an idiot. He's going to make $3 million at LSU, and he wants to go into pros and try to teach Cam Newton how to be a quarterback. Give me your opinion about this.
Well, first of all, I don't know. I don't think he was going to make $3 million. I think they were doubling his salary. He was making $400,000. So I'm sure money is a factor. Opportunity. Instead of being the passing game coordinator, he'll now be the offensive coordinator with total authority, with one of the richest franchises around. So I think that had to be enticing to him. And I don't know what type of negotiations were going on. I don't know what the ceiling for him to make money. I mean, there were two schools of thought: take the money and run, or double down. And if you can replicate that, then you're not only the hottest coordinator in the business, you may be turning down NFL head coaching positions a year from now.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but coaching in college and coaching in the pros, where the pros are making more money than you are, and you're trying to teach them to do something they should already know how to do. I don't kind of agree with that. You know,
very few pro quarterbacks are going to listen to someone, quite frankly, who is younger than them.
That's the point I'm trying to make. Is you're butting your head against the wall with the pros, and honestly, I don't understand why anybody would want to coach in the pros to begin with. I mean, you know, you're unless you're just out there as a figurehead. I appreciate you taking my call.
Thank you very much.
And you have a great day, okay?
You got it, Al. Beth is in Louisiana. Hello, Beth.
Hey, Paul. First of all, I just wanted to tell you that appreciate listening to you every day. But I wanted to ask you about the thing with Odell Beckham Jr. and just your thoughts, because you kind of take a kind attitude sometimes toward things. But I was kind of frustrated because, you know, Coach O has used and had such a disciplined team this year. And I know it was fake money and all of that, but, you know, I was disappointed that Odell would take that opportunity to do that. Just what you thought.
There were so many former players down there, and Odell Beckham always has to be the center of attention. So he was, and I don't know what everyone else was doing because there were so many of them. But I'm really not bothered by it for this reason. The media is the one who made this into a big deal. He had a cameraman right next to him. There was also a CNN reporter right next to him. So he was simply playing to the media. I mean, even if he was handing out $100 bills, the school is not going to get in trouble for that because they can simply explain it away, and the players will give the money back. There was no really malintent. It was a publicity stunt, and the media fell for it, and I would not be upset about it. It's Odell Beckham.